You're listening to the Turn Autism Around podcast, episode number 134. Today, I'm doing my second hot seat. This is a hot seat with mom Swethana, who we are going to be talking about her daughter, Risha. And this is episode 134, like I said. So we have Risha's BB map, we have her one-page assessment plan. We are talking all about the 4 steps of the Turn Autism Around approach, specifically for kids who are talking but not conversational. We call those VB map level 2, level 3 learners. And this is a great hot seat podcast that I think you're going to love, whether you're a parent or a professional. So Swethana is the mom of 2 girls. She lives in Kansas City with her husband, and her daughters are 10 years old and 5 years old. Her 5-year-old has autism, diagnosed at 3.5, and she has been an intermediate learner for years. She also has epilepsy in addition to autism, and her life was kind of turned upside down like many of us when COVID hit. So we are talking all about when you should program for things like preposition and pronouns, and why programming for intermediate learners is so tricky. So let's get to this important hot seat podcast with Swethana. Okay, so Swethana, it's so nice to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So first, I would love to hear how you fell into the autism world.
Yeah. So my elder sister's son, my nephew, he was diagnosed with autism, and this was way back in like 2002. And I remember she was here. She's still here, and I remember she brought him to India, and I was back home in India doing my bachelor's. And I remember seeing him for the first time when he was 14 months old, baby. He was smiling, just like a regular kid. Just like have that social interaction. Very cute, plump baby. But then she brought him back again when he was 2.5, right after his diagnosis. And I was like, is this the same baby? So, because there was lack of response to the name, lack of eye contact, more aloof.
And you didn't have any kids at this point, so you were just...
No, I was still doing my college, doing my bachelor's degree. So, yeah. So then fast forward like 16 years later, I have my own kids, my younger daughter. Then I was seeing the same symptoms in her. Like right around 13, 14 months, she was happy, like making eye contact. When we would click pictures, she was looking straight into the eye. Like she didn't have any words. But then around 16 months or so, I did notice that she just stopped responding to her name. There's lack of eye contact. And I remember one of our friends, she asked us if we could come over for like a Thomas train ride. And they have kids same age as our kids. So their younger one, they have an older girl and a younger boy. And the boy is like 1 month older than my youngest one. And I could clearly see the difference between the boy and my daughter. It's like
And you already had an older daughter who was 4 or 5 years older. So you had already raised, gotten through the the toddler preschool years. And so you were well aware that something was different at that point.
Right. My older daughter, she's neurotypical. She's like, so we didn't have to go through all this. But yeah, younger one, yeah, we were seeing all those symptoms, especially like lack of response to name, lack of eye contact. And so at 2 years of age, when we went for a pediatrician well visit, and she recommended like infant toddler services. Since we are bilingual, she said, it would help her with her social, and communication skills. So we just went forward with that. Around like 2.5, we got a call from infant toddler services. We did that. Like it was only like 1 hour per week. Oh,
And
speech.
it was about a year after you first noticed the symptoms. So
Yeah.
it
I
takes
mean, I have
time.
to
Yeah.
accept we were in denial. I mean, because I knew my nephew, I know the so symptoms. So they were like two voices in my head. It's like one is saying she's showing the symptoms of autism, and the other is saying, like, no, she was going to be fine, right? So there's
Mhm.
that denial there. But however, we continued with infant toddler services. But what I didn't know was there was hope for autism, that there's something called an ABA therapy. I had no idea until we received a diagnosis like when she was almost 3 years and 7 months. So
Wow.
a year later, we got
Hmm.
diagnosis in July of 2019. And then at
And
that point, we didn't
did they say where she was on the spectrum at that point?
she was diagnosed with level 2
Level 2.
autism.
So
And
that's
then,
in between. Level 3 is the severe autism, and level 1 is
right,
mild autism at this point. But those levels are very subjective, I think.
right.
So she was 3 years, 7 months, level 2, and how were you feeling back then?
It was all kinds of emotions like grief and pain, and then, anxiety, stress, fear, all you name it. We were going through all those emotions. But then we didn't waste time. The psychologist who diagnosed her, she said, there's something called ABA therapy. It would benefit her if she could get like 25 hours to 40 hours per week. And she already started going to preschool at public school when
Mhm.
she was at age 3. Thought it would help her with like social skills and all that.
And those were like special needs classes.
Especially, I mean, they had peer models too, with special
Mhm.
needs kids and peer models. So she was going through that. And then a month later after diagnosis, we found this ABA center. And then we started her on ABA therapy, like half days. Monday through Thursday, she would go half a day school, preschool, and half a day ABA therapy, and Friday, full day ABA therapy.
So then she also developed seizures. At what age did she
So
develop the seizures, and what did that look like?
So 3 months after we started ABA therapy, she had a episode of seizures, and she had her first seizure actually a little after her first birthday. So she had one occurrence of seizure, and we had to rush her to the ER, and uh, they just did an EEG a month later, and they said it's fine, no normal EEG and all. And this was like in July 2019, we got autism diagnosis, and like 5 months later in December, we got the epilepsy diagnosis. Like she was sick, stuffed up, and all. And then 4 days later, she had seizures. She had multiple
Mhm.
seizures, so we had to rush her to the ER, and we were in the hospital for 2 days. So, and she was put on seizure medication.
Is she pretty stable with her seizures now?
Yes, she is stable with her medication, but the medication
That's
is
good.
still going on. Yep.
Okay. So that brings us to December of 2019, and we all
Yes.
know what happened in 2020. So,
Yeah.
and you were telling me before we started recording that you found me in my courses right when COVID hit. So when COVID hit, she was displaced out of her services. Is that what happened?
Yeah, so because of her epilepsy, along with the autism thing, and our neurologist said she has like lower immunity to like cold viruses, right? If a virus attacks her, her susceptibility goes down. And now we are like 3 months later, we are into COVID, right? So as a parent, it was hard for us to make a choice. So we decided to stop the direct services because of all the COVID thing going on. And that's when I was little getting stressed out because I know she needs that the ABA therapy. And then her preschool speech language pathologist, I was working on one of her goals, like yes, no questions. And she sent me a link to your video. Um,
I have a
and
video blog about teaching yes and no, which is complicated. So we can link that in the show notes as well. But yeah, so you found me through that first video
through that,
blog, but I have
right.
hundreds of video blogs. And yeah, so then you started taking my courses about six months
Yeah.
ago or longer. Okay.
Then after that, yeah, I listened to your podcast. I watched more of your videos, and I did your podcast survey. I was on a podcast with you, and that's when you
Right,
recommended
right,
take my courses. And so,
right,
and then
right.
Yeah.
We can link that one in the show notes too. So I did a podcast listener survey last year, right towards the end of the year, because I was getting to my top 10 favorite podcasts for the year, and I was coming up on podcast 100. And so you completed the survey, and you came on a call, and you asked a great question about intermediate learners, which is so complex. I mean, it's great that, the SLP sent you that video on yes, no, but now after taking the early and especially the intermediate learner course, what kind of things did you not know back before you took my course, and then afterwards? Like what kind of things did you learn?
So the first thing I think that I really learned from even with your free workshop or videos, is like the demands are high, reinforcement is low. And that's the thing that I did not know before. And it seems like that's a very basic thing when especially with my child, if you place demand and you don't have that right amount of reinforcement ahead of time, she can just escalate into different kind of problem behaviors.
Yeah. So any kind of problem behaviors, whether that's a child with autism, a typical child, an adult, if you have problem behaviors and all of a sudden I start crying, or I start trying to put my fist through the wall, the demands are too high, reinforcement's too low. And that is across the board. And so, and I think one of the mistakes that people make, especially with intermediate learners, and when I say intermediate learners, we're going to talk about the VB map a little bit, but level 2, level 3 VB map learners, no matter what their chronological age is, are particularly difficult to program for. They're talking, but they're not conversational. And sometimes the more you push, the weirder the language can get, and the more problem behaviors can occur. And so my approach, first ABA, the science, then the verbal behavior approach, which was my first book and my first, trying to give an overall view of how we, parents and professionals, should really put these things together. And now my new book, Turn Autism Around, is really an approach to look at the whole child, the whole family, and to look at problem behavior reduction at the same time we're working on the language in the right order and the self-care skills in the right order. And as you say, it is as I say, as complicated. I'm sure you know that now. But so demands are if you see problem behavior, the demands are too high and reinforcement is too low. What kind of other things did you think that you were what do you think about teaching skills like prepositions, pronouns, yes, no?
Yeah, I didn't know that there was certain order until I started taking your courses. And because I think for my daughter especially, she struggles with pronouns and prepositions, and pronouns are still messed up. We're still working. That's one of our goals, pronouns and prepositions. She's like, I want mommy open door for you. She's like, I'm not mommy open door for me. Yeah. So I've realized that I didn't realize that there's a certain protocol, there's a certain method to teach those. So that's another thing that I've learned from your courses. Problem behaviors also, I mean, we got the basics from her when we started the ABA therapy, but again, with problem behaviors too, I didn't know that you should work 95% of the time preventing problem behaviors. I mean, you put it rightly in your courses, like
that is one of my key things.
Right? Yeah, be proactive and reactive. And we were doing that unknowingly, but after taking your courses, it made it more clear sense to me. Like, okay, this is what we should be doing.
So parents and professionals who spend 95% of our time preventing problem behaviors. And those problem behaviors don't have to be full out tantrum or throwing things or property destruction. We want our kids to be happy. We want them smiling. We want them having fun. We want them running to the work area, running to wash their hands, running to get dressed. And we need to think about reinforcement and keeping the demands as low as possible and the reinforcement super high. So it sounds like you've learned a lot. And the nice thing about this hot seat, so I did a hot seat several weeks ago with Emily who was a blogger from Mama to Cash's Voice. And so this is hot seat number 2. And basically I'm thinking that I'm going to do more of these. And what I'm trying to do by doing some hot seats is walking either a parent or professional through my 4-step approach. Ideally, the parent or professional should have read my whole book and or taken one or all of my courses, because, if you just got on here and you had no idea, you just watched the yes, no video blog, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm having all these problems. I'm having problems with this and problems with that. And, she talks like this and her pronouns are messed up, and you don't even have an inkling of the approach. It's going to be hard. So I think a lot of our listeners are in the position you were 6 months or a year ago, where you were doing ABA, you were trying to help your child reach her fullest potential. But at the same time, and not a whole lot of people in the whole world know how to program for intermediate learners. I happen to have a very vested interest in learning and creating my programs for intermediate learners, because my son, who is 25 on July 3rd, has been an intermediate learner since he's been 4. So I would go to Dr. Corbone's clinic up in New York with my work with the Verbal Behavior Project, and I would go there and I would pay attention. I would be like, okay, this is the way he's trying to do intraverbal categories and webbing, and this is the way he's teaching this, or X, Y, and Z. Yes, no. And then I would go home and I would try it with Lucas, and sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't, and I'd have to adapt. And once I got him learning, it was pretty magical to figure out how to help other kids, and then eventually through my writing. So the plan is, you have submitted all of the documents that I've asked for, and we're going to just go through the 4 steps of the Turn Autism Around approach. Swethana. I always have to look at your pronunciation for your name. So she has agreed to let us publish these documents: the VB map, the one-page assessment, the one-page plan. She's going to send the self-care checklist. The Intraverbal subtest, and we're going to put those in the show notes for you all. So go to marybarbera.com/podcast, and you'll be able to get those, her actual documents. We've covered up, the dates and the confidential stuff, the professionals' names who have done this. But I think it's a really good opportunity for us to illustrate how complicated it is to program for intermediate learners, how we do have an approach, and that it is able to be learned by motivated parents and professionals of any type, even paraprofessionals, and you can really start turning things around. Your daughter was 5 by the time you got on the podcast listener survey and joined the course. And I mean, it's never too late. I mean, there's people listening with 15-year-olds who are like, well, it's never too late to make some progress and to turn things around. But it's also never too early. Like if you would have had this information right out of the gate, even before she was diagnosed at 14 months when she stopped responding to her name, you would have had more resources. Probably half of the people that introduce themselves in our toddler preschooler course don't have a diagnosis. And so I really want to make this information accessible to you, to everybody listening, no matter what the age of your child. And there's no time for kicking yourself because you were in denial. I was in denial for a year and a half.
Right.
Even if you're not in denial, it's hard to get services. It's hard to get in line for a diagnosis. And with COVID, we all just basically lost a year and a half of our lives. And luckily, you said your daughter Risha is in therapy now, 40 hours a week of in-home ABA services. You're very happy with the BCBA and the team, and they haven't, as far as you know, taken my courses or read my new book. But hopefully, everybody out there will be able to, because of your generosity, we'll be able to actually see what BB maps look like and what the one-page assessment looks like and the plan. Okay, so the first, before I get to the 4 steps and walking you through, this is not an actual consultation. I have not met this child. I haven't looked at any videos. I haven't, assessed her myself. And so I really can't give medical or behavioral advice. So this is the way our courses run, the way our workshops run, the way the podcasts run, is we're trying to get information out to you all, but we can't, if I give some advice, it may be wrong because I'm not a part of your daughter's case. So, know that, and know that if you're out there listening and think, oh, well, my daughter has seizures, or we need to work on yes, no, and she told, to work on it this way, not necessarily, although my book and my courses have a systematic approach to try to teach you how to fish, not feed you a fish, so that we always go back to the 4 steps, which first step is assessment. So, you had a VB map for your daughter done starting at, the age of 4 or slightly before that. At the age of 3, you had a VB map. So for those of you that are listening that don't know what the VB map is, so the VB map is the Verbal Behavior Milestones Assessment and Placement Program. I hope. It was written by Dr. Mark Sundberg in 2008. And I had the opportunity to help field test the VB map starting in 2006. When I was writing my book was published in 2007. So my first book, The Verbal Behavior Approach, only mentions the ABLES, which is the Assessment of Basic Language and Learning Skills, which was initially written in 1998 by Dr. Mark Sundberg, the author of the VB map, as well as Dr. James Partington. So back in 2003, well, even for Lucas, back in 1999, 2000, we had an ABLES. When I started working for the Verbal Behavior Project, we used ABLES on everybody, and that's what's in my first book. So since 2006, I moved from the ABLES to the BB map, and I feel like the BB map is a really great tool. And so for those of you, and I know that the majority of you are listening, not watching, so I'm not going to really do anything where I'm holding things up or giving you a display. But so the VB map has been field tested for kids with autism, but it was developed and field tested first with typically developing kids. And so looking at developmental checklists, what comes first for level 1 BB map learners, which is the lower columns, and level 1 goes from 0 to 18 months typical development. Level 2 goes from 18 months to 30 months typical development. And level 3 goes from 30 months to 48 months typical development. So kids with any kind of speech delays, autism, typically developing kids, you could do a VB map on. And if they are young, they should have, all of level 1 complete if they're over 18 months of age. But a lot of our kids, if they have moderate to severe autism, what I've seen over the years is level 1 is like a peak with little to no manding or requesting or tacting, echoics, and vocals are also low. So as you move up to level 2 and level 3, you get into things like requesting with more language and matching more categories and imitating more fine motor and more complex skills, and things called interverbals, which are the answer part of WH questions. So and I've done some podcasts on conversational skills and intermediate learners. We can post those in the show notes as well. But interverbals are a crucial part of conversations. And so if I say, what state do you live in? Your answer is actually an interverbal response. And so a lot of our conversations, all of our conversations are advanced mans. I ask questions or you ask me questions, and advanced interverbals, which are the answer part. And you have to have a lot of ability, receptive ability, and you're bilingual, you said. And so if you think of it, this has really nothing to do with autism. It has to do with how we learn everything, how we learn language, and it's very complex. And so typically developing kids will pick up one language, and they'll even pick up 2 or 3 languages without a lot of effort. But with kids with delays and autism, that tends to be a really much more difficult. The other parts of the VB map that a lot of people don't talk about, the other thing about the milestones, the first sheet of the VB map, is that you fill out these blocks and you get a score. And so initially Risha's score was 60, and that was back in 2019. But the other problem or the other parts of the VB map, which are really good, are the behavior barriers, VB map barriers. Because the part of the problem with the ABLES assessment was like all the good behaviors you wanted at what cost. So the VB map is all the good behaviors you want on the first page, all the barriers, which don't include just throwing themselves on the ground or screaming or aggression or self-injurious. It also includes barriers like poor scanning or hyperactivity or self-stim behavior or impaired articulation. Like, you don't just want to keep going with language if you can't understand the child, for instance. So the barriers is really important as well. Her very first VB map, her barriers were said to be 24. However, we're going to talk about a recent VB map which showed different scoring, and just briefly talk about that as well. So the other part of the VB map is the transition assessment, which is really important too, and that is all your self-care tasks, like your potty training, your how much reinforcement, like a range of reinforcement. Do you need, a lot of reinforcement, or are you good with just praise? Or how do you do with group classroom responding, social skills? How do you retain new skills? Like, how many trials does it take to teach new skills? And so overall, I'm just kind of going through what was presented to me as part of the assessment, which is the first step of the Turn Autism Around approach. And recently there was a VB map done when Risha was 5, and the last score was October of 2020, was 118 on the milestones. But the new BCBA who started the home program, new to her case, she did it and got 80. And the barriers went from 14 to 75, which is a big jump, right? She had a lot more barriers on this more recent assessment. And then the transition assessment, which we want it to be high, was 29 compared to 63. But let's just talk a little bit about overscoring. And it's not anybody's fault. Like, it's not like, whoever did this or these assessments, didn't know what they were doing or whatever. Well, first of all, the child could be different. The parent, like, if I would do a VB map on my own son and I wasn't a behavior analyst, I would tend to overscore because you want your child to do well. But for any child, you don't want to overscore, because what that does is you and the professionals keep pushing and making goals that are too high, and then problem behaviors will come to be, right? So I would rather, and I also don't want to see someone like you sent me some assessment data that shows that every day she's got some non-compliance, some escape. She sometimes pushes and throws things, and property destruction like tearing papers. And, her tantrums can last an average of 4 minutes. Like that to me means the barriers are 75 or 80. Like, so that's why I said to you, never meeting you, never seeing a video, when I see data to show that we're having daily problem behaviors pretty significant, the barriers are high. And that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your daughter or wrong with the program. It just means that we need to do more things, like you said before. Up the reinforcement, lower the demands, make things easy, make things fun, and not push in the wrong direction. So in addition to the 2 VB maps that we're going to have permission to share in the show notes, also a big part of my Turn Autism Around approach is to do a 1-page assessment. Even if you have the VB map done, you have reams of assessments. Why do we have to do this little 1-page assessment that Mary Barbera thinks is so great? Because it really is great. It is a snapshot. It can be done very quickly in like 10 minutes. And where on here is showing that she's ripping paper, or that she can say, I want to go backyard and wear shoes. I mean, those are the things that mom reported on here. It's a quick glimpse. And if you're a teacher out there or a behavior analyst and you have multiple kids, say you have 6 or 8 students or clients, the having 1-page assessment on all of them day one, I would feel more comfortable. We would know allergies, we would know medications, we would know safety concerns right off the bat. We would know, do they eat off utensils? Do they drink out of a bottle? I mean, I've had kindergarten students who drink out of a bottle for their only liquid. Like, that's important to know first day, right? When the kids can't report. So the 1-page assessment is very key. We will link that in the show notes. And then also a part of the assessment is the self-care checklist. That's for everybody. That's talked about at length in my book. You can get all the book resources with or without book purchase at turnautismaround.com. So we can link that in the show notes as well. But we want to get all of these assessments done. Read the assessment chapter for sure. Read the book in order. It was meant to be read in order. And you can also listen to it. Now, the other assessment that's really only if the child is talking, which Risha is talking, is the Intraverbal Assessment. And if I am going to try to tell how quote unquote high functioning a child is, I am going to go up to them. I'll give you an example, and I don't know if I've said this in other podcasts or not, but so I was with the VB project and I walked into my classroom with a teacher and she had 8 students in the classroom. And she said, oh, we just got a new teacher, Johnny. And oh, he's really high functioning. And I'm like, oh, okay. I don't know what that means. So I go up to Johnny and I go, hey, buddy, what's your name? And I forget if he said Johnny or not, or maybe he ignored me. And then I was just like, hey, can you tell me some things that fly in the sky? So I'm asking a question just to see what he's going to say. And he's like, 3, 2, 1, blast off. And it's like, that's great. He's got language. I mean, we're not here to like say your daughter is, anything less. I mean, she's got a lot of language. She has a lot of skills. This hot seat is strictly just to say how we might look at it from the Turn Autism Around approach, and we might move her forward in a direction. So the interverbal subtest is really important part of the assessment as well. We'll get into the teaching part in just a second. So those are the main assessments. In my book, I also talk about getting a language sample, especially for kids that don't talk or only babble or only say a few words. That's really important. For somebody like Risha, who has a lot of language, that may or may not be, you might have to just do a 15-minute assessment or only track what they're saying for an hour spontaneously with you not really engaging with them, just to get a feel for it. It's not impossible. And then the other part of the assessment is a couple videos of them alone and them engaging with you. And if I were going to do like a real assessment where I would actually work with your child, then I would want to see those videos as well, because you've provided so much information, but sometimes like getting a glimpse of things, is even better. But I don't do any kind of one-to-one work, so this is as good as we're going to get. But the nice thing is that you have a team that's supportive and is going to listen to this and help you kind of make some gains, which is super nice. Okay. So assessment, if you have a BB map score that suddenly looks different, lower, or suddenly looks higher, really make sure that the person doing it, or you, if you're doing it, are not overscoring. And it's not a regression. The child could be doing worse. The child could be, you just don't have like the instructional control you need to, and really testing on the BB map for level 1 is a piece of cake. Level 2 and 3, it could take days, multiple hours. Like that was one part of field testing, the BB map in 2006. I remember getting like the best time to do a level 1 learner. I did it in 20 minutes because he had hardly any skills. But once he has all these skills, or once your daughter has all these skills, it becomes harder and harder. Okay, the next step of the Turn Autism Around approach, first step is assessment, second step is making a plan. And that's the other thing that is, there's a whole planning chapter in my book, and there's a planning sheet in my book as well. And since I didn't really give you instructions, like is in my toddler preschooler course, to literally take the one-page assessment and start working your way down the first column. So if I did that with Risha's one-page assessment, as soon as I got down to safety concerns, she has concerns about wandering strangers, traffic, and water. So that would be my very first need on the planning form. And then the next section down is she can feed herself, and she with all kinds of foods, and she also sleeps through the night. Those are both strengths, especially to a 5-year-old with autism. So I would make those part of the plan, and I would kind of go in that order. So your current plan starts with, a lot of language, and so that's one of the mistakes which we're going to talk about soon in chapter 9. But, when we get a child that's talking but not conversational, it seems like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves and on the child to, how are we going to get to the next level? How are we going to get these boxes filled up on the BB map? How are we going to get her conversational? Yet pushing too hard in the wrong direction will often make issues. And I think that if we start more from the safety, self-care, manding, that's really answering WH questions. That's really where your conversational skills are going to come, yet you have to do it so carefully. So I would put on the strength column, the eating the variety of foods with utensils, sleeping through the night, potty trained mostly, self-care mostly independent. one of the things you wrote that she said on the one-page assessment was, I don't want to do something. That's negation. That's a contraction. Those are things that I would put on the strength column. I think those are big, and makes me think like we could probably get more of that. But the more naturally the language comes in, the better she will do as well. And then on the needs column, in addition to some of the things you put, safety, non-compliance at bedtime, wiping after a bowel movement, needs assistance with dressing. So that's, I think, on there. And then interverbals, interverbal responding, especially with categories. So let's jump down here and talk about what I saw on the interverbal assessment. Again, this is something that's free of charge. It's a supplement to the BB map. I think it might be in the book resources. We can link it in the show notes as well. But so the interverbal subtest has 8 groups. This was developed by Mark Sundberg. And the 8 groups are, the first 2 groups are easy. They're kind of babyish, but yet again, some kids had 0 on their interverbal subtest scores. But Risha's daughter has 10 and 10 on the first 2 groups, meaning she can fill in the blanks. She can twinkle, twinkle, little, she can say star. The itsy bitsy, she can say spider. Head, shoulders, knees, and she can say toes. Happy birthday to you. She can also answer what's your name, which is in group 2, and you wash your, she can say hair or hands or whatever. And for one of them, she is 1, 2, and we're going to put this in the show notes, 1, 2, and she wrote buckle my shoe, and she didn't know whether to count that as correct. Yes, anything nearly appropriate is good. But what I look for with the plan, because I do have interverbal responding on the plan as a need, is she falls apart basically in groups 3 and group 4 on questions like name some numbers, what are some colors, what's your favorite movie, and then, so those are all interverbal categories. So you're in my courses now. So module 4 of the intermediate learner course has my whole category program. It's not about teaching it receptively or teaching the interverbal or teaching the tact. It's a multiple control program that I have found over the years, over the decades, to be able to teach intermediate learners categories, which will eventually lead to webbing. And that, I think, is something that you should rewatch, and your BCBA and team members should learn how to do that protocol. The other place you fall apart in groups 3 and 4 is what's in a kitchen, what's outside, where are trees, where is a refrigerator. And so this isn't really talked about much, and I don't even think I have like a program or a bonus video, but a rooms program. So what I would do is take pictures of the kitchen, your kitchen, the garage, the bedroom, the bathroom, and outside, okay. And then teach her, and maybe take pictures also of the whole room, and then also the dishwasher, the refrigerator, the microwave in the kitchen, the bathroom, the sink, and the bathtub. In the kitchen, also the sink. And so then we start teaching her, like in the categorization, oh, sink, that sink is in the kitchen. Oh, this sink is the bathroom sink. And you see what I'm saying? So yeah. I would say the big things, wherever the child gets stuck, is you look not at, oh, I have to teach them who builds a web. She got a 0, I have to teach that. No, it doesn't matter. It's not important. No, but what is important is teaching categories teaching rooms, teaching things in rooms. And you can do that with 3D items, like going around and saying, what's this, what's in a kitchen, let's go to the kitchen. And you can also do it with pictures. So that's the planning for how we're going to teach Interverbals. And then, okay, so we have the assessment, we have the plan, we have to really look at safety needs and the strengths and the needs, and make sure that you are working on getting her more safe, getting her more aware, and getting her happier. Because if she's throwing things or ripping things up or has 4-minute tantrums during therapy, to me, that's not happy enough. And I know that the ABA companies out there that take insurance and everything, they do need to document, these things. But at the same time, I think we really need to work hard to get kids doing better and better and reducing these things. I did do 2 video blogs, which I think we should, these are going to be very long show notes, but 2 video blogs. One's called The 3 Buttons with Dr. Carbone, where the middle button is the button we want them to be pushing everywhere, at the table, away from the table, during meals, during dressing. That is the right demands and the right reinforcement. If we don't have the right demands and the right reinforcement, we've got the pushing the self-stimulatory button or pushing the escape button. I don't want to do this. This is stupid. I'm throwing paper to get out of things, whatever the situation is. The 3 buttons, I think we should really link in the show notes, as well as a video blog I call Tit for Tat Programming. And it can really happen quickly with intermediate learners, is, working on things like who builds a web and teaching rotely, where's the refrigerator? No, we're not teaching this. We're teaching kitchen and sink and refrigerator and all these things that are going to matter, like go to the refrigerator and get the juice out of the bottom drawer. And then we also have to teach features of these things, like the drawer, the handle, the shelf, the freezer, the refrigerator. Those are going to be so much more functional than even teaching. I mean, we can't really get to prepositions and pronouns, or I wouldn't worry about them much, especially prepositions, until you've got a lot of features. Because if you say, go put that under the on the bottom, it's confusing.
She needs to understand that first.
Yeah, she needs to understand the world around her more, and the house and the rooms and the outside versus inside. And I also have a bonus video called The Book Program, which is really all about how to get more natural environment teaching going with books. So you can look at that. Okay, the third step is teaching. We take her assessment, her plan, we make sure the goals, if you're working on preposition goal and pronoun goal, and there was another goal that I was like, I probably wouldn't work on that. Working her, getting her to tact on what she's doing to improve communication and socialization. I don't really know that getting her to tact as she's doing something should be a big focus at this point. However, I'm also not a part of the IEP team. I have no idea what her goals look like. Just make sure the goals are meant for her and not meant for, just kind of the goals that we put together for most intermediate learners. Make sure you also have goals in the plan to reduce major problem behaviors to near 0 levels, and minor problem behaviors I would get down to 20% or lower. That's usually my goal. But for teaching, the third step is you do have 40 hours of ABA, which is awesome. I'm wondering, she does have an older sister, but does she go to any preschool or anywhere socially now, or is that still on hold because of COVID?
Yeah, that's still on hold because of COVID. Yeah, she used to go to preschool, and then once COVID hit, we just did a virtual school and just like Zoom meetings with her special ed teacher, and weekly one meeting with her SLP and OT. Yeah. and then like circle time meeting with her peers. And so it was all on Zoom.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
hard. Yeah. Yeah. So I would try, if possible, to get her back into some kind of socialization next school year. But, again, it's a very personal decision. She's got immune issues, she's got seizures. You just have to go with what you can. I mean, you're obviously doing a tremendous job. So for teaching, again, I work on an interverbal program, but it's got to be really, in my opinion, multiple control based on what my findings are over the last decades. Teaching rooms, and I would kind of hold off on the whole preposition and pronouns, although I do have lessons in the intermediate course on that. And the one final thing I'll say about the teaching part, the step, is I really do think it's impossible for a very gung-ho parent like yourself to take the course, especially the intermediate course, and to try to maybe even read my book and try to then tell the BCBA or your team or the SLP what to do, especially with these complex programs, because nobody does it like I do it. And I have actual protocols that I've tried, not just on Lucas, but dozens of kids in person. I've done case studies. I've published a few. I've presented a few case studies on different receptive to TAC transfers and those sorts of things. It's complex, and anybody can learn, but I would just say, if you're out there and you're a professional and you're like, well, that sounds like it really is quite complex. And you can attend a free workshop to see if it might be for you, whether you're a parent or professional. Just go to marybarbera.com/workshop, attend a free workshop. If you like it, I would encourage you to join our online course and community. All right, we are getting low on time, but I do want to point out one chapter in the Turn Autism Around book, and that is chapter 9. It's called Talking But Not Conversational: Strategies to Expand Language. You got a chance to read this chapter. Did you know everything in the chapter? Was it just kind of a review for you since you took the course, or did you find some things?
Some of it was a review, but some of it, like, I think I missed some basics that I did not know in the course, like table time. I just started right off, just bringing her to the table with her reinforcement. But I think in your book, you mentioned like start with just reinforcements at the table. I missed that point. So I just just jumped into the program with the reinforcers. So she was doing well, but then it fell off, and then she just got bored of table time. She's like, no table time. Yeah. And then the big issue with my daughter is her reinforcements keep changing often. And which is a challenge for the BCBA and the team too. So the BCBA is doing a good job of bringing in a variety of reinforcements into her home, and then keeping her busy, and then trying to see which one she likes before placing demands or working on the goals.
And 2 reinforcers that I use a lot, especially for intermediate learners, is the bears in the cup. Have you heard of that or seen that in my video? So they're little plastic counting bears in a cup. And basically it's a token system. However, doing the bears in the cup, I find to be better, because you could put, 10 bears by the cup, and then you have to get 10 bears in. Every couple responses, you can put a bear in. So you can have 20 or 30 responses before you let your daughter watch a 20-second clip of a movie or give a piece of a cookie. And one of the things is the variable ratio schedule, that the reinforcement rate needs to be a lot higher for intermediate learners. And so the bears in the cup, and then also a counter clicker, is a really good reinforcer, especially for intermediate learners, that you can go fast. All right, every time you tact, I'm gonna count. Oh, we're up to 27. Now we can take a little 30-minute break and watch a video or a 2-minute. I also find this clicker to be really good at the grocery store or in typical preschool. And it's a really good reinforcer. Okay, so the 5 mistakes briefly in chapter 9 on working with intermediate learners, and the mistakes to avoid is focusing on length of phrases and sentences too much. Mistake number 2 is not knowing how to deal with scripting. Scripting in itself isn't bad. Stimming isn't bad. However, if you have a child who's scripting nonstop and they have all this language to learn, they've got all this language, it can get even more tricky. And so it's not bad, but if it escalates, some kids, if you don't repeat what they're saying, they escalate to like aggression or something worse. And so it can become really tricky. Mistake number 3 is not knowing how to prevent or correct language errors. Mistake number 4 is hyper-focusing on colors and other pre-academic skills. And mistake number 5 is focusing too much on talking while neglecting other areas like self-care and problem behaviors. So, and then we go through steps to kind of turn things around for those kids that are talking but not conversational. So you want to definitely check out the book, and the book resources are free at turnautismaround.com. And the 4th and final step of the Turn Autism Around approach is data collection. We want to use easy data to help us evaluate if it's working or not. You did send me some rate data from the BCBA, like out of an 8-hour session, she has 0.5, hour per hour of this or that. I find that rate data, especially on an ongoing basis for smaller behaviors, isn't really all that helpful to me. I prefer partial interval data, which I don't talk about except for in my courses, because it's complicated. I mean, I may have mentioned it, I may have shown it somewhere, but I like partial interval data. I do talk a lot about my calendar system, which, especially if your child has any medical issues, you could write down if she had a seizure or if her dosage of medication changes, you could write that down. And then for big tantrums, if really the goal is to get rid of the big, property destruction and tantrums that last 4 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever they last, I might consider keeping calendar data in addition to or instead of rate data. And like I said, your ABA team may need to use rate data because that's what the insurance approved or whatever. But we can also add a calendar. We can add ABC data. We can add partial interval data just to help us figure out, oh, she vocal protests when we pull potato head out, or, oh, when we get to this prompt level for dressing, this is where she has a problem. And I think we want data that's easy for you to complete, but also makes sense. Like, without our decades of calendar data, I don't know that Lucas would be in as good a shape as he is. And because it really does guide me and keeps me on track to figure things out. So that's the data I would take or consider taking. There is a whole chapter on problem behaviors in my book with data collection, and those are described in the book resources as well. So I know we went fast and we went long, and all of these will be in the show notes, all of the things we discussed. But do you have any questions before we wrap it up about any of those steps or things that are lingering in your mind?
So what about like the obsessive behavior if she has? I didn't mention any of the it's in the like documents, but she had like a minor obsessive, like she needs to have the cabinet doors and doors closed all the time. And I checked with the BCBA and we are okay to keep them closed. But we're also teaching her to wait. If you have to take a spoon or a fork or something from the cabinet, we put them high up, but we're teaching her, she immediately goes, close the door, mommy, close the door, So she's kind of obsessive in that sense to keep all the drawers, cabinets, or doors closed. But we're also teaching her to wait. Is that the right approach? What do you think? I mean,
I'm not a big fan of okay, now we're going to wait, fold your hands and wait for, 1 minute and 20 seconds. Now we're going to, I'm not a big waiting program kind of person. However, and we have to look at the whole picture. If it's an obsessive thing that's driving everybody crazy, or say she wanted the cabinet doors open and you were like, I don't want to, or she wants to leave the door wide open with she doesn't like the screen door or something that's no, that's not something our family can deal with. But if it's the cabinets are usually closed, I mean, even typically developing kids and people somehow are you didn't close the cabinet again,
yeah, it's not too obsessive, but that's something that we just do with.
I would worry more about the major problem behaviors at this point. I would worry more about the tearing up paper, throwing things, throwing yourself on the ground, or crying for 4 or 5 minutes a day or a session. Those would be what I'd target first. The other thing about obsessiveness is it really could be a side effect of her seizure meds. I mean, I have no idea, but it could be a mineral vitamin deficiency, if she's not eating right, or some kids have zinc or magnesium deficiencies. And, you might want to look into that as well, just to make sure she's healthy. Some kids are obsessive and they need medication. Which I did a podcast episode with Dr. Michael Murray, which is one of my absolute all-time favorites, and that's episode 28. And, I am not opposed to, looking at that. If it becomes something, if you're saying every time she goes to the kitchen, it's 95 times an hour she's saying close the door, it's
no. Yeah, she's not that obsessive, but
I'm also not opposed to being okay, go sit down and write your name or whatever, and go color for a little bit. I just have to keep it open for a little bit, and then have her do something, or okay, go get some a snack and sit down, and then once I'm finished this, I'll close it. So I would do it more just naturally extend the time when you're reinforcing it,
rather than just telling her to wait or have a timer.
Yeah, I mean,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't do a timer or anything. I might be hey, okay, you go, put your shoes away, and then I'll close the cabinet, and even close it when she's not even there.
Yeah.
And then that way it's not she's demanding that you close it and that you're closing it.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that we are thinking about is transitioning her to school. She's ready for kindergarten this fall, and we were thinking about half a day school, first half of the day, and then second half of the day ABA therapy. And I know I watched the advocacy video from your courses. You did mention about having a BCBA from the school districts, on the IEP. So do you recommend certain number of hours at the BCBA from the school? Because from the IEP meeting that we had with the school team, and I included our BCBA too, we did not include the BCBA hours from their school district BCBA. I know the school district is very good. They have a BCBA, but I'm not sure if there's 1 or 2 or 3 BCBAs for the whole school district,
Yeah.
Do you recommend a certain number of hours that BCBA would overlook her case, and then collaboration between their BCBA and our BCBA?
I would worry more about who's going to be with your daughter one-on-one.
Okay.
If that is a possibility, that hopefully could be also at home. So you could work at home on things, and then she would know how to, ideally somebody should be taking my courses. So they're know about reinforcement and demands. And, I just feel like the person that is with your daughter, not just 2 hours a week or 10 hours a month or whatever, the person next to your daughter, the paraprofessional or one-to-one RBT, would be who I'd want to have training and oversight by somebody who knows what they're doing. So I do think that if you are comfortable with COVID and all that, and she could push in to somewhere, I think it would be good, because I think she has a lot of language and a lot of skills, and I think going and trying them out will be good. I just worry about the continuity and the the people that are with her, that know her, should be able to at least go in for the transition period, not like day one where you're going by yourself and she can't, really get her needs and wants known. And
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
all right. So before we end, I always like to end the same way. Part of my podcast goals are for parents and professionals to be less stressed and lead happier lives. So any self-care tips or stress management advice you can give to other parents and professionals listening?
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through all kinds of, stages, grief, guilt, frustration from her diagnosis, and feeling low and all that. But what really recently I started doing meditation, and that's really helping me, kind of like positive thinking, and all the people in our lives so far, like friends, family, everybody, try to give moral support. And I would say the same to all the parents, especially special needs parents. My sister always tells me special needs kids are born to special parents. And I feel that's true. And I feel even more special are the siblings of special needs children. They have to, understand that at such a young age. But
Yeah.
we have our low days with her. Problem behaviors escalating, good days, very good days, bad days, very bad days. So, but we just all three of us, my husband, myself, and my daughter, have learned to, positive thinking positively. We keep saying she's going to be fine. She's healthy, happy, independent. She'll get there. We'll just help her. And I do believe that positive thinking creates positive situations, that your thoughts will become reality. And I would just suggest all special need parents, especially moms, because we go through that guilt, did we do anything
Yeah.
wrong for our children
Yeah.
to get that
No.
diagnosis? Yeah, so it really helps to be positive.
Yeah. And you're doing a marvelous job. And I think this is a really good, your generosity with sharing your daughter's documents and being open and with her situation, your situation, being able to help hopefully a lot of people out there who are struggling with similar things, with different things. But I think positive thinking is definitely the way to go, and meditation is a proven strategy to really help.
Right.
So thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you in the courses going forward. So thanks again.
Thank you so much.
If you're a parent or early intervention professional working with young children with signs of autism, or if you're a parent or professional helping older children with moderate to severe autism, you'll definitely want to order my new Turn Autism Around book today. You'll get access to all the book resources that will help you right away. For all the details, go to turnautismaround.com.